Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Last week was very densely packed with the news from the Munich Security Conference as well as the other political news surrounding the war. In this video, we're not going to be touching any of that because I'm pretty sure a lot of you already feel very tired because of it. And we're going to be discussing what's happening at the war directly and how well Russia is doing. Spoiler alert, they're not doing that great. But besides not doing super great, they're also complete morons because these idiots tried flying some of their Shahed drones over the territory of Ukraine on low altitude, and one of these drones hit the nuclear power plant sarcophagus. Now, this is not the end of the world, so let's not panic. I know the HBO series Chernobyl has really refreshed the disaster in our memory, but despite the fact that Russia hit this sarcophagus and they made a lot of mess, they created a big hole that will need to be repaired. Still, a lot of work in this installation is being done by the primary sarcophagus that is located under this outer layer. So there's going to be additional work that needs to be done. Russians are not costing only Ukrainians. They're costing the money also for us because it's going to be international organization that's going to come and try to repair this because no one wants radiation leaks. And more importantly, you can see that Russians are reckless and they will stop at nothing until they're stopped, and they will threaten your safety as well. They do not care, so it's in our best interest to stop them. Another thing that got noted is the spike in Russian casualties over the last couple of days. I got a lot of questions in the mails, and I will explain why this is happening. Because this is not only shown in the casualties data, but also in statistical data that I follow with regards to the assaults of the Russians. We saw a huge increase, arguably the biggest over the last month. You see the monthly assault rate data. So now we're in February and we saw like a big spike in the number of these assaults per day. I believe it went up to 260 assaults of Russians to Ukrainian positions per day. This breaks down the narratives that potentially Russians are being exhausted, and more to the fact that they are trying to regroup their forces and they're still trying to attack with their forces on certain directions. But I think the situation is a little bit more complex than that because we need to look at the map for this. Now, this is happening, majority of the spike is happening on the Pokrovsk direction. Pokrovsk is this huge city right over here. This is the ultimate Russian targets that they want to get. This is the first city in the chain of cities that Russia would want to capture if they want to even on paper state that they have captured the region of Donbass. They haven't done so far, and they're having serious issues because Ukrainians are hitting back. I already reported, and Ukrainians have been confirming that they've attacked all across the Russians from this direction of the Pokrovsk city, and they're not really allowing the Russians to advance around Pokrovsk. So fight for the city of Pokrovsk, the main target of Russians, is really stalling for the Russians. They cannot really get a hand of it. What was happening beyond that is Ukrainian defense of Kurakhove. We covered this like a month ago. And I think over 2 months ago, I said that the Russians would eventually close down this Kurakhove pocket. And I said that it's probably going to happen like 2 months ago. Ukrainians are still fighting for it. And this is where Russia got activated. So the idea that everyone was kind of looking at is that Russia tried to advance towards Pokrovsk. They tried to take over. They couldn't do it. Like the situation that is towards the west of Pokrovsk in this area, there is just a lot of open fields, and Russian tactics just did not work over there. Therefore, a lot of the analysts think that the forces that were used at Pokrovsk were pulled away and they were reinforced towards Kurakhove direction to basically finalize this operational goal to close down the Kurakhove pocket. It's not a big win for Russians. There's nothing really that they're going to be winning by closing this pocket. The fight is just going to continue. But this is additional advances, and this allows essentially Russians for line go up moment, like we captured another couple of settlements. Now, they have been encroaching a little bit here and there, most notably towards Andriivka and towards Dachne, right over here, beforehand. But 2 days ago, they've actually made a significant effort. Russia has been noted in this direction that they have not been using a lot of vehicles. They have been using some here and there around Pokrovsk specifically and so on, but not to a large extent, not like they were driving in columns anymore. However, now, a couple of days ago, they again put a lot of the effort into this. So they penetrated towards this area, towards the village of Ulakli. And from that, they were also able to travel along the highway towards Constantinople. And actually, some of their forces also entered Bahatur. And that was potentially dangerous. That was a pretty deep penetration of the forward groups. However, the fact that the Russians were able just to drive with a lot of vehicles along the road, that didn't really constitute that they were capturing something or not. So right now we are hearing that Ukrainians have already reinforced these positions. Bahatur and Constantinople are fully safe. Ulakli, there is a fighting that is happening right now. And right now, the question is whether fighting in Ulakli, which is this settlement right over here, whether this is a fighting that is necessary just to kind of stop Russians and let the Ukrainian forces leave the pocket or not. We're going to find out in the next couple of days. So long story short, Russians accumulated a lot of forces in this area, significant forces, mechanized forces. They send in a lot of men, and then they tried penetrating deep into the Ukrainian territory. There was no deep penetration, but it created a little bit of a nasty position for some of the Ukrainian forces in the pocket. And right now there is stabilization efforts that are ongoing. There are messages from the Ukrainian side that also confirm this. So Officer Plus here states that more than 40 pieces of armor and 250 bodies of Russian personnel carried out assault operations yesterday through Kurakhove direction. This is the one that I talked about. The enemy managed to achieve some success in advancing, but I don't think it was worth the loss of 39 pieces of armor. I will post the specific materials later. We had also additional confirmation from other channels, which says it looks like the order has come down for the Russians to wipe out everyone combat capable. The assaults of the front line are increasing. The Russians keep coming non-stop. Everyone, the wounded, the crippled, whoever. Yesterday on the Pokrovsk front, we captured a guy, and he said that the unit received orders to send everyone into assaults, and their commanders were ordered to kill all witness that and those who returned from the assault. So overall picture here is very understandable. Russians are trying to do something, but it's costing them a lot. And arguably, situation became even worse than it was in 2024. Because here is a Russian Z-blogger that is writing about what is happening on Pokrovsk front line. So I'm going to read it to you. Information from the ground about the situation on the southern sector of Pokrovsk front. We have no strength left. We don't know what else to do. The sky is completely under Ukrainian control. We can't drive more than 3 kilometers from Selidove. They burn everything to hell. There are a lot of optical drones. They control all dirt roads 24/7. Rotation is simply impossible. We walk 18 kilometers on foot. Water, food, and fuel are becoming critical issue. I don't even mention heating. The guys are literally freezing in their positions. Nothing is getting supplied at all. Regarding drones that aren't on optics, Ukrainians have found a gap where we have no electronic warfare coverage, frequencies from 1020 to 2100, and they are actively using it. A couple of days ago, we lost 2 solid fighters. They just didn't make it to their positions. They won't let us cut the roof of the WAZ vans, saying it's registered equipment. So you're driving inside one of these like a coffin. You can't see or hear anything. Personal transport is banned. Everything is hitting Novotroitsky and the nearby rear positions from artillery and MLRS to God knows what kind of missiles. We've never heard sounds like these before. In short, it's a total disaster. Nobody understands how to fight in such conditions. The Ukrainians are fucking us over completely in every possible way. If we don't start massive bombing runs with light bombs as dense as they were near Avdiivka, there is no way in hell we're moving forward. And again, this is not me or some kind of Ukrainian propaganda channel or some kind of other fantasy world representative that is talking about this. No, this is the Z-level Russian propagandist that is trying to get Russia to win and trying to get money to the Russian forces. This is the Russian propagandist at its core, and he's stating we're really fucked. Then there is this Russian volunteer who is going to talk about the situation for the Russian troops on the front lines.
The sky is swarming with 1,000 drones, and the task is to get from point A to point B. To get to point B, you need to walk openly. It's impossible to do it with transport. Take the position. Report that we have taken it. Our commanders, of course, are great. We are moving forward. But at what cost? Lives could be saved just by giving them a rep. Or do we not have a rep in the country? I just don't understand.
Yeah, pretty telling. Rep that she mentioned is an electronic warfare. It's just the AI translated didn't understand that. Beyond what is happening on the Pokrovsk direction, there is also some activity on the Kursk direction. There has been mutual fighting with Russians getting a little bit more out of it than Ukrainians. Notably, Russians advanced around Sverdlikovo and they were able to advance quite significantly. So most likely we will see Russians try to push even more. However, when they tried attacking Ukrainians towards the north, towards this Mala-Loknya settlement, then in this area, they actually didn't have it so good. They've sent in a column with like tanks and vehicles with red Soviet flags to attack Ukrainian positions. And then, well, let's just say things happened that I cannot show on YouTube. But I'm going to leave, well, it's not really a link. Just join the Discord and we have the Not Safe for Work channel specifically for videos like these where you can see Russians just being dismantled live. Let's talk about some of the bad news for Russia. Now, I've showed you that because of the political discussions that had recently, like a lot of the Russian stock market has been jumping up, a lot of the optimism in Russia has been returning. For a lot of people, that is the sign of that's like, yes, we're nearing completion. For me, it's more of a sign of desperation of the Russian economy because there is nothing yet signed. There is nothing is even in works. There was basically a phone call, but already because of like any hope in the air, the Russian businesses and economics were just like instantly jumped to any conclusions. And they're like, okay, maybe we have a future. Because without that, it's very clear that everyone understands just how grim the reality of Russia really is. And they understand how bad the picture is looking for them. But recently, Russian central bank actually made additional discussions on whether or not raise the interest rate for the Russian central bank. We know that there has been a lot of discussion and pressure on the Russian central bank not to raise the interest rate because it's literally killing the economy. And there was a lot of people that were hoping that we will see some maybe positive trends towards Russia. And they definitely looked that way. But it was unfortunately not gonna happen, like, because Russian economy is tumbling downwards. They don't really have the money, and war is just taking every lifeblood of the Russian economy. Because the important part here is not that the Russian did not raise the interest rate. What is important is all of the talks that happened around it. Because beyond the interest raising, the Russian central bank spokesperson, she came forward and talked about, like, actually, we're not really expecting any inflation to go down. We didn't really see any positive signs of inflation going down. More importantly, all of the supposed inflation going down was due to the fact that that people and companies are already predicting and seeing the patterns of how the Russian government is working. So because Russian government wants to cheat with money, what they try to do is they dump like a lot of expectations on how bad the Russian economy is going to do, announce pretty big budget deficit early in the year. Then they try during the year to adjust expectation for that bad budget. They try to, massage it a little bit, maybe increase expectations, work around somehow to make it look like for the middle of the year towards the end, you massage it like, oh, it's kind of looking okay that Russia is actually managing their budget. And then it's the end of the year, and then the next year starts, and then it's finally getting dumped that it's like all of it was like complete disaster. And then Russia just dumps a lot of that money that they just didn't spend into the economy, and saying is like, nope, our budget deficit is pretty big actually. We were lying to you. And that was actually what everyone and big companies have figured out. So instead of trying to grow their businesses and maybe take additional credits, they were actually not taking additional credits, mostly because they already have so many credits for their businesses up to the neck. So instead, the companies just took like a little bit of a waiting time, like a waiting period, and said like, let's wait until December, and then the government is going to dump all of their budget deficit money into the economy right away. And they were completely right, because Russia indeed dumped enormous amounts of money into the economy, and the companies is like, now let us have it. So basically they just waited until government starts handing out goodies, and they just, instead of taking on new credits, they took on the government money, which is obviously skewing the perspective of what the real, so to say, printing money and usage of that money in the Russian economics, what does it actually mean? It's really, really bad. So Russia every year does this dance that I just explained. And data is compared to the previous year, it's 14-fold. 14-fold. Last year, Russia also did similar scheme. But even with that scheme, in January last year, they reported that it's going to be a budget deficit of 124 billion rubles in January. This January, they reported 1.7 trillion rubles budget deficit this January. They're still going to do the same exercise that I just described, that like trying to massage it out during the year, so this number will look more pleasant. But the point is that even with last year reporting 124 billion deficit in January, it ended up being for the last year over 3 trillion rubles, which is stupidly large amount. And if this year we're starting with 1.7 billion, so once this 1.7 billion goes through all of the steps, like stupidly large amounts for the Russian economy, and then it finally goes through the banks, to the actual companies, to the actual consumers, and then all of this gets literally dumped in the Russian economy, what we should be expecting is maybe in like a month or a month and a half, we would suddenly see, oh, Russia has another inflation spike. What happened? We don't know. How did this happen? Not because we dumped 1.7 trillion rubles into the Russian economy just from the get-go. But the main point is that 1.7 trillion is already pretty much like half of whatever was left of the Russian rainy day fund war chest that they had. We've discussed it plenty. So let's sum it up. Russian economy, if you look at the headline, oh, they didn't increase, so nothing happened. No, it's bad. It's really bad. It's like 14-fold bad compared to the last year. And I want to have like one political statement in this video. And this is like probably the best thing that came out from the whole Munich Security Conference altogether for my perspective. And this is the Prime Minister of Denmark speaking about what we can expect with European attitude towards the war in Ukraine.
Let me start by answering your first question. You were asking all of us in the panel, what is the plan with Ukraine? And let me jump to conclusion. It is to win the war. That's the plan.
I think this kind of message is incredible, and this is the way that we should be going. So to help Ukraine win the war, your help is absolutely required. To help save Ukrainian lives, participate in our fundraiser, support the Ukrainian armed forces. Let's get those vehicles to Ukrainian armed forces to help them work and defend the country, protect lives, and protect our future. Let's help Ukraine win. Trust in Ukrainian armed forces. Thank you for supporting them. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you next time.